Okay, thank you, Barry, and thank you, Rick, for the introduction. And when you characterize the year in London mandatory training, I would hope that everybody gets forced into your mandatory training in London, England. So I'll start off. A tiger walks in a bar, strolls up to the bar, and says to the bartender, "I'm really thirsty. Pour me a beer." Bartender says, "No problem, but why the big pause?" So speaking of a pause, it has been too big a pause since Canada has built and crewed frontline warships. Uh, you heard my name. I'm the Director General of Strategic Readiness within the Naval Staff, and under that portfolio, I have three directorates: personnel, logistics, and information warfare. I'm about 3 months into the job, so this truly is my rookie year. As such, I'm fortunate to be learning each and every day. My intent is to talk for about 30, 40 minutes, hopefully not too long as I'm looking forward to the Q&A. And I'm really lucky to be joined by true experts, Rob and Casper Don, and I think Chris Robinson's here as well. So I'll be sure to defer any hard questions to them. I'm gonna run the slides from my end, so please let me know if it seems like I'm way off my slides at any time. Today I want to talk about adapting the RCN establishment over the next decade. Naval warfare is evolving and will continue to evolve. In an era where we are returning to great power competition and increasingly more conflict in the gray space, Canada needs a Navy that's effective, both in conventional warfare, but also that can operate and fight in the information space. As we shift from a Navy with the Halifax-class frigate as our workhorse towards a Canadian service combatant being our central platform, we need to adapt our establishment to crew CSC and its increased capabilities. It is no small challenge to sustain the current Navy while transitioning to the future fleet. There are challenges in material, training, money, people. And while I'm happy to discuss any area within the RCN, and will do my best to balance facts and opinion, well, probably more opinion than facts, today I'll focus on the people piece. To highlight the challenge and the opportunity, I'll go through a brief operational vignette focusing on future operations, talk about the objective, appropriately crewing the Canadian service combatant, and then discuss recruiting, diversity and retention, occupation management, all as both challenges and opportunities in adapting the RCN establishment. I am very interested in your comments, concerns, your advice about what I'm going to say. Feel free to call me out if I use too many TLAs, three-letter acronyms, as I go through this presentation. I appreciate everyone's here tonight for taking the time and for everything that you do for Canada and the Navy through the NAC. I'm going to start with a short warfare vignette, which was prepared to enable discussion on the future of warfare in the RCN. Too often we focus on the threats of yesterday and allocate resources to the threat that we understand instead of the threat of tomorrow that we may not understand quite as well. I think working through potential scenarios will be the beginning of understanding the future threat environment and what we might expect to see in 2035. What this means in the future is the RCN may not be hunting submarines in the North Atlantic or firing 5-inch cells at surface targets. We'll be fighting an invisible threat, a threat in the information domain. This includes threats from cyber actors, adversaries, reducing our ability to communicate with command, and our ability to target over the horizon with new weapon systems. So to go launching the vignette, CTG 301.1 comprised of two Canadian service combatants, HMCS Maple and HMCS Leaf, along with HMCS Protector and HMAS Adelaide, is deployed to the South China Sea in support of Government Canada and coalition objectives. The task group commander, embarked on board HMCS Maple, has worked up the task group to fight in the information warfare domain, while also being prepared to address kinetic legacy threats. A few of her staff are physically located on board Maple, a few on board Leaf, but the majority are supporting the deployment by standing watches at the Operational Support Integration Center in Esquimalt. The commander's primary advisor is the Information Warfare Commander. The other warfare commanders know they are flying blind without effective comms, satellites, and functioning onboard technology free from cyber attacks. While perusing her daily reports, the task group commander notes the work of the embarked intelligence teams, the various electronic warfare intercepts, a few recently thwarted cyber attacks, as well as met reports due to operating in an environment that needs to be continually monitored due to climate change. The commander sees within her task group young, innovative crews which leverage AI, machine learning, digital twins, the ship's Internet of Things, automation, and quantum computing. The crews and ships are ready for a highly informationalized warfare environment. The task group commander is continually impressed by the diversity, sense of camaraderie, and teamwork as they work together on Op Poseidon. The task group commanders received intelligence assessments from our embarked task group intelligence team that they received from space-based ISR assets, the National EW collection about a dark target transporting contraband goods. HMCS Maple passes this intelligence to a regional maritime domain awareness fusion center while using the embarked remotely piloted air system for tactical visual support prior to readying their naval boarding party to conduct maritime interdiction ops. Information intelligence are heavily relied upon and shared with local partners to ensure that threats do not continue to develop without monitoring. While the boarding party is on board, full motion imagery from the remotely piloted air system is streamed back to Canada for second line processing, exploitation, dissemination, and sharing with the MDA Fusion Center. The boarding party found no illicit material, but left pamphlets and Canadian branded equipment to ensure the civilian crew knew the RCN was operating in the area. The team also made small repairs to the ship to allow the ship to continue safe navigation. Through automatic language translation devices, they easily communicated in the local dialect. HMC's Protector is detached to operate in the vicinity of the Philippines to contribute to rebuilding efforts after an earthquake and subsequent tsunami, which coupled with climate change and rising ocean levels devastated the coastal communities. The fleet oceanographers, accessing and integrating historical and current data received from autonomous systems, have assessed the threat on follow on aftershocks is high. The Canadian Task Group uses satellite reach back to communicate with Halifax and receives maritime component command direction on targeting considerations for information operations, as well as practicing hard target land-based targeting should the need arise. An assured message and presence in the South China Sea demonstrates that Canada is committed to freedom of movement in the region while providing a credible response to the threat from regional adversarial navies. So I look at this and I ask, how is this different from naval operations today? Many things are the same. Communications, opening sea lines of communication, maritime interdiction ops task groups. What is different is the increasing reliance on satellites, IT, autonomous systems, reach back, targeting, cyber, in other words, information warfare. There was no information warfare on board HMCS Algonquin, pre or post-Trump, but there will be on board the Canadian Service Combatant. As we transition towards CSC, we need to consider which aspects of our crewing, occupations, tactics, structures should stay the same, and what needs to change in increasingly complex, congested, and information-dependent naval warfare. So I think that many of you would have seen this graphic before, but I want to highlight a few things. This is the Canadian Service Combatant. First, I find this very exciting, both as a naval officer and as a Canadian. We need a Navy that can fight Canada's wars at sea and win, and I don't think anyone on this call is convincing, and navies need visible modern ships. The CSC is the centerpiece of the National Shipbuilding Strategy, the largest procurement in Canadian history, and probably one of the most complex. Canadian Service Combatant is a node in broader systems of systems. Its communications, architecture, sensor netting capability, and digital backbone will be integrated with the defense enterprise ashore. Although everything in this diagram needs to be taken into account and design a crew, I will point out a few things. Aviation. There will be both inhabited and non-inhabited systems. The Cyclone has already greatly increased our capacity, and remotely piloted systems will increase the data that needs to be received, processed, and transmitted. Autonomous systems will need to be maintained, operated, and their data processed and transmitted ashore to other units. Canadian Service Combatant will have two separate command management systems, CMS and Aegis, both with integrated cyber defense. These systems need to be understood, they need to be crewed, and they need to be monitored. Weapons, surface-to-surface missiles, anti-air missiles, Tomahawks, 127mm gun. The capability of the ship will be significant. The Canadian Service Combatant will have a mission bay, a multi-role mission bay. We need to conceptualize how to optimize that bay and which crew members we need to do that. And at the bottom of the slide, if you can see it all right, a couple of things. First, displacement. CSC will be significantly bigger than Halifax class, and its complement will be significantly smaller than Halifax class. The Canadian Service Combatant as a warship at its core is designed to be combat capable only through the marriage of high-tech equipment and highly trained RCN sailors. Today, I will talk about those sailors. So fundamentally, as we look at how to crew CSC, we're challenged by a few core things. Number one, as I mentioned, the ship is bigger and more combat capable, both in terms of being bigger and better, and in terms of the breadth of capabilities we add in cyber, processing power, mission bay, land attack missiles, etc. Number two, the crew will be smaller, both because it will have fewer bunks, but most importantly because it's something we need to do. We need to have the right number of sailors at sea and the right number of sailors ashore supporting those ships. Over the next months and years, we'll determine exactly what the crew size is, but it will be about 20% smaller than Halifax class. So a bigger, more capable ship with a smaller crew. Additionally, CSC will be a very technical ship, a node in a broad system of systems fed by Internet of Things, AI, digital twins, processing power that will be exponentially greater than Halifax class. All this data will need to be protected, fused, analyzed, and transmitted. Some members of the ship's company will go to sea and some won't. Some members of the ship's company will support the ship from ashore. Now, we still can't wish away things like damage control, storing ship, cleaning stations, replenishments at sea, boat work, small arms. All these things will still need to happen. But fundamentally, to crew CSC, we will need smart, digitally savvy, and innovative sailors, and we need to recruit them today. Today, we're recruiting CSC's directors, operations officers, engineers, petty officers. These are sailors who are joining the Navy today who will be a CSC's first crew. We need to ensure they're trained, equipped, and given the experience to walk on board CSC the day we're built. Well, the ship will represent leading-edge innovative technologies in all areas of warfare: surveillance, C4ISR, engineering, environment, habitability. In the end, the RCN will only be able to realize the full potential of the platform if we have the right sailors, the right education, the right training, the right experience, and the right organization with the right mindset, innovative, embracing change, agile. In short, the ship as a capability will only be good as the crew, as has always been the case. So how do we recruit, manage, train, and retain the sailors who will crew the Navy of 2030? If you'll bear with me for 4 slides, I'd like to show a few graphs to talk about recruiting and retention. As I mentioned, these are the sailors recruiting today for CSC. So in the first graph, the green bars at the top represent intake. And the orange bars at the bottom are sailors who have left for any number of reasons. The dark blue line, which is mostly in the orange, is the net of the two. And so you can see from that dark blue line in the middle of the graph, the last 8 years, we have at best broken even. More frequently, attrition has exceeded intake, which means we will never recover unless we correct this trend. And it means we're now about 1,000 trained sailors short on an establishment of 8,000. It will take many years to recover. Even if we were to recruit 2,000 sailors today, this would just create backlogs and blockages in other parts of the system. And what I'm finding in my rookie year is that HR is an incredibly complex process. So the solution lies in increasing recruiting and training while keeping a weather eye on retention. Retention tends to hover for the RCN around 68%, which is a healthy number as long as we're recruiting more than we're losing. However, when recruiting is slow, every sailor we win, we retain as a win. So I show this next slide to show recruiting in fiscal year 1920. And 1920 was a decent year for recruiting, and we still ended up 200 sailors short of our target. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. The dashed line at the top is the goal, and the solid light blue line going up the middle is what was actually achieved. So you can see what was achieved is actually well short of the target. The bars at the bottom represent applicants in the previous career year. Overall, not only was it not a successful year, in particular, we're very short in specific distressed occupations such as marine systems technicians. So although the RCN is not tasked with a regular force recruiting, there are actions we take to influence and assist the process. Number one, raising awareness to the Navy. Through a social media campaign, including talking about the Canadian Service Combatant, Canadian Leaders at Sea programs, at sea, bespoke outreach programs. We reach into colleges and universities, particularly the chancellor and dean and professor level to influence the influencers. Honorary captain program, national public engagements. Additionally, we are increasing the number of college programs that provide technical equivalencies. We have agreements with colleges in all provinces, New Brunswick and PEI. The NCM non-commissioned member STEP program provides paid education for technical occupations, with the additional bonus is at the end of their program we receive sailors who already have occupation training. In terms of recruiting, we need to leverage the success of the Naval Reserves, and I'll go into that in further detail. But the Naval Reserves have significant diversity, and they've had significant success in recruiting, and we need to leverage that for full-time service. We focus on priority occupations where we see specific shortages. We go out in particular target those occupations, But overall, it's often challenging to know which attraction efforts equate to positive intake of recruits. As about to show, our greatest recruiting tool occurred in 2000. So in fiscal year 2021, this fiscal year, you can see in the light blue is the cone of possibilities. So we use predictive analytics to predict where we're going to end up for the year. And you can see it's well below the target once again. And this is largely due to a number of factors, one of which, of course, is COVID. However, there's a good news story. Within the bar graph, you see these large blue bars popping up, and those are recruits, Canadians going to the recruiting center this year. And it's 7 to 8 times above where it was last year. So there are a number of applicants, lots of applicants in the thousands that are ready and have expressed an interest in joining the Navy. So we didn't plan it, but the pandemic and the subsequent economic challenges has been a boon for attracting people to the Navy. Both as Canadians, I think, see the military helping out domestically, but perhaps they also see from the military a steady job and from the Navy a steady job with a predictable future, which can be extremely enticing in a chaotic economy. Another positive with the number of applicants that have expressed interest in joining the Navy is we can increase the number of women and minorities on the competition list. Where we have more applicants, we have more opportunity to choose the occupations and diversity that we're looking for. Now, the negative effect of COVID is there's been a severe impact to training. There's a large backlog right across Canadian forces from basic training to operations room officer training that has all been interrupted. And to this end, the RCN has started running our own basic training. We will continue to do so to take advantage of the Canadians who are ready to join the RCN. Once again, we can't bring them in all at once. It has to be balanced with throughput through our schools and matched with fourth generation opportunities at sea. Playing with my slides a bit. So hopefully everyone can see this is the Reserve Force recruiting overview for fiscal year 1920. And this is another, I think good is not the right word, it's a great news story. The graph shows 1920 reserve recruiting, which as in the previous 2 years to that, exceeded targets, well over 600 sailors per year. I won't show 2021, which is down due to COVID, but the Naval Reserve has attracted and recruited beyond targets consistently. And I have every belief that they'll continue to do so in a post-COVID environment. They are well on their way. The Naval Reserve is well on its way to an establishment of 5,474 sailors. And yes, I know that number. Hopefully in time for the 100th anniversary of the Naval Reserve in 2023. And many of these sailors are young, highly educated and diverse Canadians spread across 24 reserve divisions in Canada. This is such an important resource. We need to ensure they are aware of full and part-time opportunities. They can move back and forth from full and part-time. And they were engaging them all in solving the challenges of the present and the future. It is an important message to all these sailors that we are recruiting RCN sailors, not reservists and rank force. We are recruiting RCN sailors. Whether you're full or part-time, you're an RCN sailor and part of the Navy community. And just to highlight again, with a small anecdote, the breadth of experience and knowledge that Naval Reservists bring to the table. Cyber is a perfect example. Recently, we were given 10 cyber billets and immediately identified 40 Naval Reservists across country with the civilian qualification that makes them ready to contribute to RCN cyber operations today. So as we look at the Naval Reserves in the next number of years, it is important to ask if we have the right structure, if part-time service is supporting full-time tasks, if you're assigning the right tasks to Naval Reserves. We need to continue to examine Class B and Class C full-time service. Is the model still the best one, or are there better full and part-time service models to encourage the employment of Naval Reservists across the RCN? So I mentioned that the overall Naval Reserve is more diverse and represents an important recruiting pool for full-time service, whether it's because many NRDs are in urban centers such as Toronto or Montreal, or because many Canadians are attracted to part-time service, or perhaps even a part-time trial period before committing full-time, or maybe perhaps because the NRDs have created an inclusive space which allows for diversity. But regardless, we can both learn from and leverage the recruiting success done by the reserves. And I stand here and sit here, I guess, as a perfect example. In terms of diversity, talking about the overall Royal Canadian Navy, I would hope that we're past the point where anyone questions the value of diversity. We need diversity of thought, of ethnicity, of gender, of background. All of these are critical to an effective and progressive Royal Canadian Navy. So we are doing things to create an inclusive culture. I believe Realma Sutherland talked about that last month. We are looking at faster processing time for specific applicant files that fall into certain categories. We are ensuring that our attraction teams are diverse and represent Canadian society. We are looking at barriers across occupations and trades to make sure that diversity does not cause a barrier to a successful career. And there are targets on the slide, and there are Canadian Forces targets, but what is more important than targets is culture. We need to create an inclusive culture that is safe, welcoming, and has flexible career paths. We need to access all talents. I mentioned that we need smart, digitally savvy, innovative, creative, and dedicated sailors, and gender, race, background does not affect that calculus. So in addition to recruiting and diversity, we need to retain sailors, and particularly middle management and senior sailors who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the Navy. As we look at retention, we really need to focus on not only overall retention, which is generally pretty good. We find that most people, when they join the Navy, they tend to stay. And our attrition, which is normally 6 to 8%, and it's pretty steady year after year after year, well below industry standards. And there is a healthy amount of attrition. We need attrition that allows promotion, allows opportunities, allows new ideas to join. And so we do monitor that attrition. However, while the overall attrition is at an acceptable level, within certain occupations, we see and we need to focus on where more sailors are leaving than would be healthy. So we conduct surveys every year, and hopefully you can see within the slide here the results of one of those surveys. And we target sailors and officers who are getting to that point in their careers where they can consider leaving. So often just before 25 years, we ask them if they're planning to leave and why would they be planning to leave. So you'll see from the results that just under 50% said they were planning to leave and articulated the key reasons why. The reasons listed on the right may vary across trades and can include pay dissatisfaction, military lifestyle, impact on families, occupation dissatisfaction, etc. Some of these we can influence and some of these we cannot. But sometimes we can make tactical and strategic changes to address systemic issues, and we need to. Although for the most part our retention falls predictable numbers, every sailor is important. Particularly in our current shortage of trained personnel, we cannot afford to ignore key factors in encouraging people to stay. So number one, we need to give people a good place to work, meaningful employment, and good leaders who create a safe, effective workforce. It seems like a no-brainer, but as we see some of the experience or some of the sailors and officers in the Navy who don't have quite as much experience, we need to ensure that we are training and educating and create an environment where they can create that safe environment for their subordinates. I think we could all agree that life is always better when you have a boss who's fair, tolerant, and promotes the appropriate work-life balance. Number two, recruit the sailor, retain the family. I had a boss who said that all the time. And I would say, to add to that, if you lose the family, you're losing multiple families, and you're losing the next generation of sailors. Much recruiting is done by word of mouth through friends and family. And every sailor and their families are members of a military family. Some wear uniforms and some don't, but they're all part of the Navy family. I think the further we recognize this and include families in functions and career decisions, etc., the better we retain the family and we'll retain the sailor. One force approach. We need to have easy transition from full to part-time to full-time to part-time to full-time service, which of course needs to be balanced. It should be simpler than it is now, but not so simple as filling out an app after a bad day or a good day and switching from full to part-time service. It's just not manageable. But we do need to have a robust system where we have full and part-time service and easily transferable. We want young reservists to join, do some part-time service, and then spend some full-time at sea. At the same time, we want regular force members at the end of a career or midpoint of a career to do some part-time service to pay back and to exercise that leadership within the Naval Reserve divisions. We need to have adaptive career models tailored to the individual while recognizing institutional priorities. It's challenging to get this right. Unfortunately, you can never meet everyone's expectations. There are institutional priorities. But as we increase diversity, we need to acknowledge that life happens and life changes, and every person is an individual that needs to be managed and cared for. Asking someone to move every 2 years over a 35 career may not be feasible anymore. However, we know that we'll need people to move and be mobile at an appropriate frequency. Targeted retention. What are the levers we can use for targeting retention? I think there needs to be more capital-wide discussion about targeted retention. How do you retain engineers when the shipbuilding industry is hiring? How do you retain sailors and officers when the public service is hiring? What about data scientists? What about cyber operators with highly marketable skills? We need to look at how we have targeted retention across the RCN. So I want to say just a few quick words about occupations. Talked about recruiting, retention, diversity. And once we have the sailors in the Navy, we need to make sure that they're in the right occupations. And so right now there are 11 occupations within the RCN, and I would submit, and I may be around long enough to see this through, you will not be the same occupations we'll have when the Canadian Service Combatant is delivered. In fact, we know we need to change. It takes 2 to 3 years to analyze an occupation, then 4 years to implement a new structure. So we'll get at least one kick at revamping every occupation between now and CSC, and perhaps 2. But it means that in this cycle, as we look at combat operators, naval warfare officers, naval technical officers, we need to map out each occupation and what we think will be required on board the Canadian Service Combatant, and where there are linkages, where there are similarities, what makes sense. What is the balance within CSC of technician and operator? Or is that the same person? Does it even need to be different? How many generalists and specialists do we need? And what areas do we need specialists in? How much can we rely on communication technology, and what needs to be fought on board the ship? And so we need to look at all the occupations now in the light of the Canadian Service Combatant, and we need to start changing them and modifying them to arrive at a successful crew for the first Canadian Service Combatant. It's very complex, but it's important, and it needs to be done now. So I'm sure that the Navy is unique in this, but often the urgent will trump the important. And there are many things that take up time. Most of them need to be done by one measure or another, but we need to carve out priority time for strategic thought and developing the Navy of the future. So the personnel campaign, which is represented here, is designed to allow this. It's designed to force us back to look at the important and not just the urgent. So there are 3 lines of operation: rebuilding, recovering the RCN workforce, balancing the RCN workforce, and then enabling support. And with each of these, what's important is that the sub-lines of operation within them are in order of priority. So you'll see what I'm talking about.
Advance the slide, please.
Oh, that's great, Barry. It means you're listening at the start.
Paying attention.
Much appreciated. So I think, great, thank you. So when we're at the top, recruiting, and this is the one area that is the most concerning now, but in the middle in yellow is the future ship and future capability. And making sure that we're developing those crews, we're spending time thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it, so that we get those crews conceptualized and built, and then change the occupations in time to deliver Canadian Service Combatant. At the bottom, and also equally important, is culture change. Code of conduct modernization, culture change, building that foundation of the RCN that will allow us to progress. And so to sum up, first off, thanks for listening. And the RCN needs to build the Navy of the future in both ships and in people, and it needs to do that now. The Canadian Service Combatant crew will have many aspects that are familiar to mariners: a captain, an XO, departments, small teams, a divisional system, fighting and functional organizations. Many of it will be familiar. Much of it will look the same, but there will be significant differences. We must recruit, retain the right sailors in sufficient numbers, amend occupation to those that will adequately service the Canadian Service Combatant, while leveraging diversity, building an inclusive culture, enabling support. Thank you for listening, and thank you once again to the NAC for all you do for Canada, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Commodore. We have 2 people lined up for questions, and the first one is